Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. Today we're going to be doing a little bit more building after the success of the market stall area over there. I'm actually kind of on a bit of a building kick right now and I want to finish off the blacksmith building. Now there are going to be a couple of lessons in today's episode, which are, I tend to think of them as lessons, but they're not necessarily like, a huge deal. This is just kind of a little bit more insight into how I like to build things in Minecraft and my process when it comes to building. So I hope you guys will enjoy this. Now, this building has kind of been vexing me for a little while. I've had a few different thoughts about this, and primarily, I really like the design of the downstairs floor here. I think it's a really nice, like, one-level building. The problem with that is that it needs to have some sort of roof on the top here, and I was a little bit conflicted at first between the height of the chimney that we've got in the middle here, which is supposed to be where all of the smoke from all of the furnaces inside of the blacksmith's forge goes, and the height that the surrounding area would have to be, like the surrounding kind of building would have to be. So I went into creative mode and I did a little bit of tinkering with this, and obviously I went into creative mode on a separate world. I'm not using creative mode here in the survival guide world, but it's kind of a special case. I will show you that in just a second. But let's take a quick look around the outside of this building here, because you will notice a few things are a little bit different when you go from side to side. And the two sides of this building, while they might look pretty much symmetrical from the front, are not symmetrical when you go further around. And that presents a bit of a problem for you as a builder, because you have to cope with the idea that the building itself is not going to look perfectly symmetrical. And symmetry is a nice, easy pattern to fall back on. It's actually quite useful when it comes to building walls and stuff like this, because all you need to do is find out where the mirror line of your symmetrical build is and mirror it to either side. This wall here is kind of a good example of this, actually, because as you can see, on this side we have a panel of 3 blocks wide here. It's a 3x4 panel. It's got logs laid over the top like that. It moves into this central panel here, which has a log down the center, and then a 3-block base that kind of narrows to 2 blocks further up. And then on this side, we have the same thing. We have this 3x4 panel, stretches down a little bit further when it gets to ground level because of the differences in height in the terrain here. But by and large, this wall here is symmetrical. That log over there sticks out a little bit further at the back, so we might actually want to remove that. I think I may even have put that there just to kind of lay out this log in the first place and give this next log something to attach itself to. But around the back here is where you really start to notice the changes, because you'll notice this panel here is 3 blocks wide, this one here is 3 blocks wide, this bit in the middle is 6 blocks wide, and of course this building is built on an even numbered kind of foundation because of the amount of furnaces we were using in here. Then this panel over here is 5 blocks wide, and then this one is 3 blocks wide, and then around this side here, the wall actually does not mirror the one on the opposite side. And the reason for that is because of the internal workings of this building and the fact that I didn't necessarily plan it out to be completely symmetrical in the first place. I've rearranged a little bit of the redstone for the minecart system in here, so now this chest here actually feeds down into another chest that the minecart collects stuff from, because it was a little bit difficult to reach the input chest because it had to be placed a little bit further back to be part of the whole minecart collection system. So I did a little bit of rearranging here. But it turned out that the way I'd built the front of the building, which I built before I considered how large the insides of this were going to be, it kind of doesn't match up completely on both sides. I can't bring this wall in any further because it conflicts with the redstone. Likewise, back here, if we take a look back in here in the back room, the hopper clock that I set up can't really go anywhere else, except maybe it could go underneath the building. But I don't necessarily want to worry too much about that. And yes, the redstone block is kind of resting, has the wooden pillars resting on it right now, but don't worry too much about that. It's not going to affect the running of the clock in any way. However, this does kind of feel a little bit strange with it being 6 blocks wide at the back here for, to leave room for the redstone to go under here and wire everything. And then this section over here being a little bit longer. This section, I can't really get to it. Let me try and duck underneath this. There we go. That's a little trick you can do with Elytra, by the way, which I will explain at some point in future. I'll do a whole episode about like cool stuff you can do with Elytra, because there's a lot. But anyway, we have our section here that's powering the powered rails up here with these redstone blocks to make sure that the minecart can go and everything, and this bit with the hopper clock. But this section here turned out 6 blocks long. And at first I didn't really know what to do with that. I thought I was going to have to scrap the whole front of the building, which I really liked, just so I could make it symmetrical. But then I thought, no, there's something we can do about this. There's actually a way that we can make this build look really cool and not have it have to be symmetrical at all. So one of the things that I've done is I've decided that this side of the building is going to have like a little utility area out the back here. There's actually going to be some sort of outside forge thing here where the blacksmith might not want to work on something indoors because it has the potential to catch fire and he doesn't want to set fire to his house. The furnaces, we're going to kind of assume that the furnaces are pretty well self-contained and they're going to be fine. They're not going to set fire to any of the wooden surroundings of this because I didn't want to sacrifice the idea that I was working with this wooden support beam set up for the build palette of this area, right? So we've got a little wood storage area out here. We're going to do a little outside forge, but then that kind of masked the fact that if you don't look at this wall too closely, you don't notice that it's all that different from the one on the opposite side. Fair enough, I thought. That's going to be enough to kind of disguise the fact that this building isn't entirely symmetrical. But then when it comes to building the roof structure here, each side of the roof is also going to look different, which is something that it was a little bit of a struggle to get behind. But then I started drafting out ideas for the roof design in Creative, and it kind of dawned on me that we didn't really need to make the two sides completely symmetrical at all. In fact, we could make them a little bit differently. So today we're going to build out the rest of this blacksmith's building, and I'm going to show you what I've done. So I've made a duplicate of the survival guide world, mainly because I wanted to duplicate this build in particular. I could have gone through the tedious process of rebuilding it block for block in creative mode in a flat world or something like that. Instead, what I did was I copied the survival guide world wholesale into a place where I feel like I can use creative mode because it's a completely separate world. It's not part of the main survival guide world where I'm not using creative mode at all, and I am going to reproduce this in survival. But what I've done is build an approximation of what I want one half of the blacksmith's house to look like, and it's actually got a completely separate kind of roof structure here. The chimney part is still in the middle, and then we can have a completely separate structure over here. So when you go through the door of the blacksmith's house now, you come through here and there's a ladder leading up to this area, which, if we can give it a complete floor, is going to be kind of a storage area for the blacksmith stuff. It's not necessarily going to be his house. It's going to be more like where he stores a bunch of his materials and maybe some tools and maybe some, wood and stuff like that. And if you go outside of the blacksmith's house and you go up maybe a set of stairs on here, we're going to go to a separate section, kind of like this, but it can be built in a different configuration. And that's going to be where the blacksmith's actual living quarters are. He's going to have a house of sorts. It's going to be kind of like a first floor maisonette kind of style thing, but it can be completely separate from the rest of the building. And that's part of what's going to give this build its uniqueness and charm. I feel like this place is going to look really cool if it's got these two separate units either side of the big chimney. And the chimney itself, I've been working a little bit on the design of. I decided it would be kind of cool to have some greenery around here, some moss and some leaves, primarily because moss likes to grow in warm places, and if you imagine this chimney blazing away with all of the heat from the furnaces and stuff, and some smoke coming out of the top of it, which I do plan to build in this episode using some stained glass, you can imagine that the moss and leaves and stuff around here would be kind of attracted to the warmth and would fester there and would grow. And so I think it would be a good idea to work in some mossy stone bricks here and there, and we can work in some leaves and stuff as well, and that can dress up the chimney part a little bit and make it really pop out in amongst the stone brick roofs of the other two sides. I think that's going to look really good. And so what I'm going to do is have this window open in creative mode here, and I'm going to basically reproduce the whole build as far as this side of it goes in survival with the creative mode thing here as a template. And then going back into survival, I'm probably going to try and freehand the rest of the other side of this build, the part that I haven't built here in the creative copy of the survival guide world, in survival without any other hints or anything like that, without actually drafting it first. We're going to use the first side as a template, and then we're going to work on the second side completely independently of that and see if we can just freehand it in survival first time. But this is part of what I do, and some people might call me a cheater for using creative mode and not just coming up with this stuff on the fly in survival, but to be honest, going into creative worlds and building some of this stuff out before you build it in survival can actually be a really worthwhile tool, especially if you're short on time, which I am kind of, because I make videos for this series daily. it's actually really useful to go into creative mode, draft some stuff, make sure that it looks good first so that you don't end up wasting your time when you build it in survival, so that you can build something that looks good and then you know it's going to stick around. And you'll find that a lot of builders who are well known for their survival series will often draft this stuff in creative beforehand. There's no shame in it. It's actually really, really useful if you want to make good use of your time in survival Minecraft. It also helps to know what kind of materials you need to work with and to get a rough idea of the materials you're going to use. So I've grabbed a bunch of the materials that I will need for this project. I've got myself some wood here. We've got lots of birch because we use the stripped birch a whole bunch. We've got some dark oak logs to continue the frame. We've got some oak because that's used elsewhere for fences and stuff like that. We've got plenty of that going on. One of the other things I noticed while I was poking around the creative version of this world is that somewhere down here, I think it's down here somewhere, there is actually there's a lake underground. And that's where all of these zombie noises keep coming from when the zombies convert into drowned. There's actually, yeah, this. What is this? There's this entire lake underneath here that I've never seen. And anytime a zombie spawns in the darkness down here, I get this like splash noise when the zombie converts into a drowned. Now, obviously, if this was a bedrock world and drowned converted from zombies dropped tridents, I could probably just use this to occasionally farm them. But yeah, not so much. Not in Java. Unfortunately, this place is going to have to get lit up. But it's nice to solve that mystery, because as I was working on the blacksmith the first time around, I kept hearing those zombie noises where they would convert into drowned, having been underwater for a little while. I had no idea where that was coming from. I figured there was some kind of underground thing, but it's good to finally lay that to rest, and I'll have to fix the path up once the grass has grown over that bit again. So anyway, as I was saying, we've got all of the materials in here. I've got a little bit of stone left over from the construction of this place here. We've got all the cracked stone bricks and stuff we could want. We've got a little bit of dark prismarine here as well, and then we've got all of this wood, and then you'll notice in the creative version, we had some nether brick built in there as well, which I think is going to add a nice little occasional accent color where we need something in a different kind of material. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is flipping back and forth, comparing the survival mode version to the creative mode version in the other window. And obviously, if you don't have the luxury of having multiple accounts, or like if you're playing on a console or something where you can't, you know, flip back and forth between two open instances of Minecraft, or maybe your computer doesn't really let you do that because it's taking a little bit of processing power in order to do that, you can always just take a bunch of screenshots. You can take a bunch of screenshots and just work with those. Or, I don't know, like if you're on a console and you can't take screenshots all that easily, just take a few pictures with your phone. Nobody has to see them except you, and it's a nice, easy way of getting started with a build like this if you have a creative mode version of it, so that you don't have to keep like closing the world and going back and forgetting where you were in the first place. It makes a lot of sense to do things this way. So I'm going to start at the front here. I'm going to get a nice square-on view of this and maybe rotate it slightly to the side so I can see what's going on behind each of these blocks here. But it looks like from this one, we've actually got this bit here taken out and replaced with a stone brick stair, which I don't have any of in here, so I'll just quickly make a crafting table out of this log. And I probably have a crafting table somewhere around here, but I don't want to keep leaping back and forth to that. So let's just make one of those. Let's make a few stone brick stairs. We'll be needing a lot of those anyway. And I think this block here actually got replaced with a regular stone brick like that. I'm actually going to do something slightly different to the creative mode version and make this whole log here into a pillar instead of letting that continue horizontally. We're going to change that to a vertical, just to hide the end texture there and to make it look a little bit less haphazard like that. We're going to extend those. And then in the central section here, I'm going to have to move the shulker boxes because we're going to build our familiar pattern of wool here. Now, it doesn't have to exactly match the creative version, but I think if we have a few different gray wool blocks here and then add the birch logs on top of that, it's going to look really nice. We can just frame that out as we did before, and then we strip each of these logs to give us that lovely stripped birch texture. We'll add one more there in the center, like so, and then this is going to be filled up with a few oak fences. I figured the blacksmith would probably have a well-ventilated house, especially even if the smoke is going through the chimney. The furnaces aren't completely underneath the chimney all of the time, so it would be nice to have some well-ventilated windows. So I'm not going to put glass in here, I'm going to put fences instead, allowing the smoke to look like it could escape out through there if it needed to. Okay, that's not too bad. I'll probably place on the stone brick stairs on the corners of these if I can. Yeah, this is the problem with building with this stuff on angles. Let's grab a stone brick stair there, a stone brick stair there, if I can probably just bridge out from here as well. And in each of these corners, we can place a stone brick there, and then we can start on the arch of the roof. Now, having this roof planned out in advance means that I can place that stuff there without having to worry too much about it. Like right now, if you were building this freehand in survival, it wouldn't make too much sense to place those there unless you really knew what you were doing. So it's kind of fun to be able to work from a creative mode draft of this and understand that those are foundational blocks for something that's going to go around the top of this. And looking at it in creative mode, yeah, that's pretty accurate. I think that's pretty accurate. Aside from the fact that we haven't put the bushes in there, it's not too bad. I'm going to use some of the wood here to pillar up temporarily, and we'll work a little bit more on the remainder of this roof. Now we want one more stone brick going up each side there, a stone brick stair in the middle to kind of round out the archway at the top of here, and then from here we're going to build up 2 blocks on either side like so, and that's coming together really nicely. Now, where did I put that crafting table? Of course, it's all the way down here. Can I reach it from here? Nope, didn't think I could. Okay, back down we go. Make a few more stone brick stairs. That should probably do us for the minute, and I'll bring the crafting table with me. And back up here to place the remaining features of this archway. We've got 2 stone brick stairs on either side, a stone brick block on top of each of them, and then let's dig into our shulker box here to get another stack of those so that we can add them to the roof structure. Bam, there we go. And now if we compare this version from the ground to the version in creative, you can see that that pretty well matches up. It's got some stuff around the outside, of course, in creative mode, but in survival, we've got the beginnings of a nice little roof arch. Now, the fact that I built that, obviously, in creative the first time around means that I can copy that block for block, and there's much less of the trial and error involved. It eliminates the going back and forth and checking that things look right from certain angles. If you built it once, then you know you can build it really well the second time as well. Let's pillar up the front here and add the next section of this wall, which is another 4-block high set of logs there. We're going to add fences up the side of this as well. Hopefully I can fit a few of those in. Nailed it. There we go. Okay, and that's going to be, I think, rounded off at the back here by some more wool and stripped birch. Let me just quickly check that. Make sure that's the right sort of thing. Okay, there's a log at the bottom here, and I think that actually looks a little bit better than having it just start with the wool there. Kind of blends it in with the rest of this wall. There we go. One of those, and then we can add the birch logs in there and there like so. Fantastic. I think that should work splendidly. While we're up here, it looks like this section of the roof kind of wraps around like that, and we can add in some stone bricks here, and then we can move the roof line along from this point. In fact, this entire roof section here is actually going to follow the line of each of the stone bricks on the edges, so it's just going to continue along at that height, and that's going to form the basic structure of the entire roof, all at the same height. This section of the creative build is actually unfinished, so I can probably finish this off, but for the most part, it all goes behind this chimney anyway, so I think I know more or less what I want to do with that. I don't need to build the entire thing out in creative as a proof of concept. I think the concept has been proven already. Let's move on to working on this side so that we can fill in the roof gaps here. Let's move around the build in creative, and this is where we get a little bit better view of the nether brick that I've added in here. The nether brick is basically just there to add a little bit of an accent, and it kind of makes the roof of the house look a little bit nice and even, adds a pop of color, and I find that nether brick actually works really well as a contrast with the birch we've got there and the dark prismarine as well. I think those are a really good combination. But I wasn't sure which material I wanted to use until I stumbled on nether brick. So again, that's something that probably I wouldn't have worked out unless I'd messed with this in creative mode a little bit the first time. So for this, we just need to break out the occasional cobblestone wall. Gonna put that at the bottom of this bit here. If I can reach, nope, looks like I will have to drop down and add that manually. And then we can add the oak fence there, and then it's nether brick all the way up from that point onwards. 1, 2, 3, reclaim the shulker boxes while I'm up here, and then once we start the roof line coming across from here, this becomes a nether brick stair, that becomes a nether brick stair, and we add nether brick stairs all the way to the top line of the roof there, and then I fall off, of course, because I'm a dingus. From here, of course, we can start placing a little bit more of the wool. We can fill in the rest of this wall. It doesn't need to be exact with the materials we're using here, but it's just there for a little bit of filler. That one there is a birch log, so we don't need to worry too much about that. And yeah, this is all looking like it's coming together much as the same as it has in creative. The pattern here is not entirely necessary. We don't need to follow it exactly, but it's just good to have a basic layout of this. Think of it as the blueprint of sorts, I suppose. Now let's put some stone brick stairs in that one. Yes, there we go. Stone bricks across the top like that. We can strip all of the birch logs down so that they are that wonderful texture. Fantastic. And then we can add a couple of oak trapdoors to the outside of this, kind of simulating shutters in this case without some windows actually needing to be there. There we go. We've got the second rooftop section done. All we need to do is go through and connect these up, and that should be all fine. Now, I think this one here actually goes in about there and then connects to this section of the roof like so. We're going to stick with stone bricks for this design. I feel like that's the most sensible roof material in this case, but we could always mix that up a little bit here and there where we want to. Yeah, I think that's going to be coming out there, and then this one goes along like so. Okay, and we're going to figure out the final section of this roof bit by bringing this lot up from the side. Once again, I'm going to have to go into creative and rotate this to see what I did. It's basically a copy of the one on the opposite side, except here we have this archway and then we have a smaller little archway above this smaller window. And I think that actually lends one of the first elements where asymmetry comes in, where we don't have the front looking exactly like the back, and that serves to give the house a bunch more character. So I'm quite pleased with that, actually. I think that looks pretty good. Here's a fun thing that you might not know. You can actually make stone brick stairs out of cracked stone bricks. Now, this is going to be different in 1.14, where you can actually make cracked stone brick stairs, but as of right now, it is possible to make stone brick stairs out of cracked stone brick. In much the same way, it's actually possible to make quartz stairs out of chiseled quartz and quartz pillar. It just kind of works that way. If you've got the materials like that, even if you converted them into the other types of materials, a lot of the time it is possible to turn them back, or at least turn them into the staired form of that. Anyway, hope that makes sense. Don't worry too much about it because it's all going to go away in 1.14 anyway, but just a little tip for those of you guys who are building in 1.13 or earlier. Quick check from the outside, and from here it's looking pretty good. It's looking like the version that we sketched out in creative, and I've added a couple of different touches, like just making sure that some of these are all birch stripped logs instead of the dark oak logs that I used here and there, but I think that looks pretty good. So let's move up to the main roof section up here, if I can get out of the tall grass, which makes it a little bit difficult to throw fireworks every now and again. And this section here is what we're going to work on next. Going to try and close this whole roof section off, and we'll need to start spamming torches down there to make sure that nothing spawns on the blacksmith's shop floor. But let's take a look at this in our creative world. That's not looking too difficult to build from this angle. We might have to work on this little arch section here that just kind of continues around from this side of the roof there. That's going to be the tricky part now, and I've left a block out there that's probably just going to be another birch log. I think this actually comes up right the way from the floor. That's a support beam that goes all the way from the bottom of the build to the top, more or less. But here, yeah, we can start putting in the stairs at, I think they're around there. There we go, another little closed off roof section. Perfect. Let's get back up to the top there and deal with this. Now, this is the problem with working on this in survival as opposed to working in creative, is that occasionally we have to go to sleep, but that shouldn't be a problem here. Let's quickly flip over and make sure that we're getting this roof design right. There's a little bit of detail in here, nothing too special, but some stuff I want to make sure I get right the first time. So behind the nether brick ridge over here, one block over, we start the next little roof ridge there, because that's going to lead out over to the top of this bit. And at this point, it occurs to me we're actually building a roof from the top down instead of from the bottom up, which is not normally the way you build roofs, but here we go. And this log section here comes all the way up to the ceiling as well, like this, and that actually creates a nice little alcove around the back here where we could potentially put a cupboard or something like that, some sort of storage space to make sure that the blacksmith doesn't always have to go upstairs up the ladder for that. But this is coming together now. Let's take this block out. That's not necessary. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. So if we're actually able to get some sleep after dealing with so many of these mobs, yep, that one's trying to break down the door. It's a little bit of a scary noise, but we don't need to worry about it right now. There we go. It's daytime. You lot can burn. And with a few more little adjustments here, like the leaves trailing down from the top of here, like so. Pop those on there. I think this is looking pretty good. It's pretty much an exact match of the one that we built in creative mode, and it's looking really nice. I think it's going to be great with a few more other buildings around it as well. It's really going to blend in with the landscape here. That's looking quite nice from the back, and we still need to fill in that central section where this build meets the chimney, but it's just going to have a wall up there. It's not going to be anything too special. We might build it out of wool or wood or something like that, but it should be nice and straightforward to do. Now, I think we're going to build the other side of this, like I said, without having to draft it in creative first at all. We're going to build it completely freehand, but using this as a sort of template. We have an idea of how we're going to section out this area now. The one thing I need to bear in mind with this side here is that we need to have some sort of staircase, either starting here or starting around the back, that's going to lead up to an entrance to this top floor, because remember, that's where the blacksmith is actually going to live in the fiction of this world. So I think maybe we could start a staircase here, and then this whole wood pile could be protected from the rain so the wood doesn't get damp if we want to use it for fuel. We can have that kind of protected by a little walkway over the top here, at least like an overhang that's going to allow the wood to be, you know, tidied away down here. And I quite like these log piles, by the way. I skipped over that a little bit earlier, but these piles of logs are nice and easy to build. You just need to lay down a bunch of trees. They don't even have to have wood underneath there. I think a couple of those logs are actually kind of hollow on the inside with a torch to make sure nothing spawns in there. But then you just wrap rails around the top. You can even have them connect to the ground if you like, or you can transfer into ladders there, which look kind of similar, but give the impression that the whole thing is kind of strapped down to make sure the logs don't roll everywhere. It's a fun little detail you can add. It works especially well in medieval builds and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to the other side of this build, it makes sense for me to do it in the form of a time-lapse, because otherwise this episode is going to run really long. So let's do that. Let's do this in the form of a time-lapse, and I'll see you guys on the other side. And welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's time-lapse, and I'm really happy with the way this thing came together. It's a little bit cartoony, and by that I mean a lot cartoony. There's a few monsters out here, so I'll try and be brief, but I think this place looks really great lit up at night, and the big spout of flame and the occasional lick of smoke up there really do make the place look like something special. I really need to get out of the way of some of these creepers, because I don't want them to blow up all of the stuff that I've just spent ages building. I'm going to sleep in just a second so we can get rid of some of these guys, but you especially need to get out of here. There we go, much better. Of course, there are still creepers around, but we'll deal with those when they come up. Yeah, the whole thing is looking really great. I think this came together quite well. There are still a few details that I will probably add off camera, but I don't want to run this episode too long, and I want to make sure I can get it out to you guys. So, like I said, this build looks a little bit more symmetrical from the front than it actually is, because the front I purposefully designed to be quite similar. But you'll notice little changes here and there, bits like the fences extending down there, where there they've got like a little low wall, a couple of differences on either side of the big chimney, and of course, different roof structures as we go further around. On this side, we have this little winding staircase that leads up to the blacksmith's living quarters, and like I said, overhangs the area where he's storing the wood for his fires to burn. In here, we will probably make it out into a little bedroom of sorts so that the blacksmith can have somewhere to sleep. A little bit of a low roof in here. It kind of feels like medieval dwelling, and we could even separate this out into separate rooms if we wanted him to have a separate like kitchen area over here, and the bedroom can kind of be up here sort of thing. But, you know, who knows how this guy lives. He probably doesn't have a huge amount of need for this living space when he is spending most of his living down here in the forge working away at the furnaces. And on the opposite side, we have this little section over here, which is, as I said, accessible from the shop floor. We can go up this ladder into a discreet little trapdoor, which leads up to this place, which can very easily be a separate storage area or something like that. We can probably store a few chests and things up here, but it's all going to be for aesthetic purposes at least. It's for the lore, it's not necessarily for us to use. The bit that's for us to use is down here, and thankfully, by laying slabs over the top here, we've meant that this chest can still open, and the minecart and everything is still running down the back there. And I actually used the auto furnace to smelt up a bunch of the glass that we used to make the giant lick of flame that's curling out of the top here. And I could probably do a larger effect with the glass if I wanted to, but it looks kind of fun. It looks sort of cartoony, and we could kind of build up the smoke in layers if we wanted to, but I just like having like the occasional sputtering of it around here. So it looks like a smaller fire, but on a bigger scale, instead of just being like this thing that would produce a giant cloud of smoke. I quite like it, and we're going to be using some of the smoke effect in this ravine. Ultimately, what we're going to do is layer up some glass in here to give it a kind of foggy effect so you can't really see the ravine bottom. And one of the things I needed the super smelter for in the first place was basically smelting up enough glass to enable us to do that. So that's a project we're going to tackle at some point this month. Probably not this week, because we've done a lot of building focused episodes, and I have a farm that I want to get to before we can even start on that, because we need to make an ink farm so we can get enough squid ink to make some grey glass for all of this. This has basically constituted most of the grey dye that I own in just the wool and the smoke glass up there. But as you can see, yeah, it looks very different on this side than it does on the other side. I think that worked out pretty well for us. There are still a few rough edges around the building, some things that I would like to refine as I go. But for the purposes of this episode, I think that's come together really well. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at my creative process a little bit, using creative mode and that kind of stuff to draft out these builds and then building them in survival and kind of freehanding some other stuff as we go. I think that's worked out pretty well, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on this episode, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.